Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of House of the Dragon Season 1, Episode 5. Let's have a quick show of hands. The moment that we embarked upon a celebration in this episode, who knew that this was going to go terrible? This is...
For sure. It's Game of Thrones universe. Weddings, they don't go well for anybody.
This is the equivalent of any time there is a charity event in any Real Housewives show, because it always ends with like somebody like smashing a glass or screaming at somebody.
True story.
This episode was just, it was so political at times, but it was like so intense. I kept watching the entire like last 20 minutes of it with just like this massive pit in my stomach because I knew something horrible was going to happen.
And it did. Oh boy, did it.
We will get into, of course, Sir Criston, who does not take lightly to threats by Joffrey, which, by the way,
Shocking.
don't name yourself, well, don't be named Joffrey. I know you don't have any control over this new Joffrey, but all Joffreys are destined to have something terrible happen.
You know, you don't need to go and mouth off to a knight. Like, yeah. Why?
Okay, well, hit that subscribe button, everybody. We'll be here through, of course, all of the rest of House of the Dragon. There is so much intense stuff coming. It seems like a pretty big time jump. It's right around the corner.
And we're going to be covering the new Star Wars show, Andor, coming up. Yeah. We'll have reviews up on Wednesday morning, so that's coming up. So yeah, hit that subscribe button. Follow us over on Instagram, Matt and Just TV.
The biggest thing that I loved about the end of this episode was it was such a perfect misdirect, because they had the conversation where we had Rhaenyra and Daemon talking to each other, and when we saw the fight, I was 100% that, oh, this is Daemon, he's making his move, he's about to do some real crazy you-know-what. Nope.
Yeah, like, if you're new to the channel, Matt and I have never read the book, so we do not know what is coming up or have any spoilers for that, and don't leave them in the comments. Yeah. We're pretty good to be not spoiled on it, but I thought that there was a possibility that with Daemon's wife having an accident and dying, that he was going to come in and just be like, listen, it is a much stronger union for me and Rhaenyra to be married so that people would accept her more on the throne, because I would then be on the throne as well, which is something that, you know, the king was never going to go for anyway. Yeah. He does not want his brother on the throne. He knows that that's a problem. He knows that nobody can control him. So even Rhaenyra would have her hands full with that. But I thought that was kind of where he was going to go with it, that he was going to put that sort of on the table, because this is just my opinion, but I still think that those two are going to end up married at the end of the day, or at least their relationship is going to continue on.
I think it's pretty clear to assume that they planted all this stuff on the show for a reason. Like, it's something clearly that for political purposes, Rhaenyra definitely seems to want. It's something that Daemon, I mean, he killed his other wife, which, by the way, the interrogation of Daemon about this at the party, where he is just basically just like, are you here to incriminate yourself? Oh no, I'm so sad. Look how, Daemon, you're such a prick.
Oh yeah, he's all like, oh no, I feel bad. Am I getting? I'm just like, wow, okay.
He is. I hate myself for how much I enjoy watching Daemon through all of this, and
it's wonderful to watch.
The whole reason why it felt feasible that he was going to disrupt this party and cause all this chaos in this fight is it's 100% within his character that he would have been the one to do that, as opposed to the, you know, quote unquote, you know, very much ruled over and just very clean cut Sir Criston Cole the Knight. He would never try anything like this.
Listen, let's talk about what went on with Sir Criston, because I understand where he's coming from with this. So he ends up in this situation where he knows that Rhaenyra is going to be marrying someone else, but he is in love with her, and he has sort of forsaken his vows of what he said that, you know, he is supposed to do as a knight to be with her. And he like lays his heart out on the table, and he's like, basically, I love you. let's run away together. I want to marry you. This is a way that, also for me, I can sort of restore some of my own honor of what I've done to you, to myself, to my vows. Plus, I love, let's do this. And she's kind of like, well, you can be the side piece. I was just like, what kind of offer is this? This man just said he wants to marry you and he loves you, and you're just like, side piece. I was like, you should have just said no and left. I understand Daemon is teaching you that you can have whatever you want, but the reality is you can't have whatever you want.
It's also, you can't toy with people's emotions like this. For most of what we've seen, I mean, yes, Sir Criston murdered in this episode, but, he is someone who seems to have a certain degree of a moral code. He clearly cares a lot about you. This is going to make him very, very sad. And that's even before we get to the point where, this all gets dropped on him. And then immediately after, he's summoned by the queen for this just incredibly awkward situation because she is so uncomfortable talking about what she's trying to talk about here, which is Daemon, that inevitably Sir Criston just makes it all about himself and he thinks that's what's going on.
Yeah, and I think we all saw that coming. As soon as she just didn't drop Daemon's name, I'm like, he's just gonna fall on his sword and just come clean. He's already feeling the guilt. He can't really stand it. And even after he tells her and he's like, if you could just do me a solid and just put me to death, I was like, wow, he really can't live with what he's done.
Yeah, this guilt is eating him alive. It's consuming him. And interestingly, Alicent's just like, all right, you can go. It's an interesting sort of twofold thing where I think one side of it is probably only increasing his suffering because he is, like you said, having such a hard time living with this. But I think somewhere in the back of her head, she's probably also just thinking about, okay, well, if anybody is going to protect Rhaenyra, it might as well be this guy who would basically do anything in the world in order to do it. It's a little risky, though.
I'm starting to think the way that this is all played out and, him attacking Joffrey for basically being like, I'm going to blackmail you. Yeah. We'll sort of go through it this way. Him attacking him killing him, and then seeing him out in the garden ready to unalive himself and watching Alicent come in. I'm actually feeling a little more like she's going to use him as sort of the ally, because that question was posed to her earlier on in the episode to kind of be like, hey, you need some allies? I can be your ally. Let me tell you about this magic tea that was brought to Rhaenyra the night of all of this. Oh, you didn't know that? You burned your dad for a lie? If you feel good about it, you feel good about it. I think she kind of realizes without her dad being there now, and the king on the floor, and her relationship with Rhaenyra is not what she thinks it was, that because she knows this about Sir Criston, and not that she's going to blackmail him with it, but just that she gave him a kindness by not putting him to death, and maybe can have him as an ally, someone that might be able to feed her information and sort of keep her on the up and up, because there's nobody really there to do that anymore.
I think that's very likely going to be the case, right? Because Alicent needs people, and, as the king's health deteriorates, it's going to be even more important that she needs people, and this is someone who can help her. She's obviously studied from her father. She's been around the king. I think as we sort of jump forward in time, how is she going to function? What is her role going to be? And I think we're going to see a more independent and more of a politically savvy Alicent as we dive further in.
Yeah, I mean, that conversation with her father, who was basically like, Rhaenyra on the throne is going to cause a lot of problems. No one's going to accept her. There's going to be fighting, and at some point she may even have to kill your son to make sure she stays on that throne. I mean, Alicent, now that she knows that Rhaenyra lied to her, is probably putting in some of those steps to make her son king. That's what I think. And I know they haven't really played that out yet on the show, but that's where it kind of feels like it's going, where she's had such a loyalty to her friend who then lied to her. It's really it's tough. We've all been there, when we're young and we're starting to learn that people lie to us and stuff like that. That her best friend has lied to her about something really significant, and she had her back. She burned her own father.
Yeah, it's going to eat away at her. Like, what happened with their dad? That's like one thing she'll beat herself up about. She's just going to be frustrated about this. And who knows what other things Rhaenyra could be lying about in the future. Like, she's known her long enough to know, like, how deep her aspiration to be on the throne is. And I think when you know someone on that level, you know kind of what they're capable of. And, Aegon's going to get older. He's going to have more of a mind of his own. And she may start to sort of be like, oh, well, look at this young lad. Look at what he is learning. She might start to convince herself that, like, okay, he can be king. He's going to do a good job.
Absolutely. And now she doesn't really have that much of a loyalty to Rhaenyra the way that she did. And, I think she's starting to realize that Rhaenyra didn't really have that loyalty to her anymore either. Because, let's look back at the beginning where Rhaenyra feels betrayed that Alicent married her father like 6 months later after her mother died. It's a betrayal to her. So, it was already done. And I think Alicent's really looking back and being like, oh, okay, all right. I know I did her dirty, but I didn't really realize that it hit that far down and that deep, because our relationship before that, she would never lie to me.
I think the thing that Alicent, Rhaenyra, pretty much every single person within the nobility of this world needs to remember is that Westeros is cruel. It is dark. It is intense. We had at the end of this episode the wedding of Sir Laenor and Rhaenyra, which happened mere minutes after a brutal brawl where somebody died.
Yeah, his love died. His love's blood is still in a pool on the floor of where they are getting married. Like, it was really heartbreaking watching, Rhaenyra pulling back tears, he's pulling back tears. It was tough.
Like, so Laenor doesn't sound like, he doesn't feel like a bad guy. Like, he's somebody who, feels he's right in the middle of this, like, immense political tug of war that's going on. We already know how, like, desperate Corlys is for power, to the point that he'll have conversations with Daemon about it.
Listen, Joffrey screwed this up for everyone. Rhaena and Laenor had already had a deal in place. They both knew that this was the way that it was going to work out for them, so that they could do their duty and still have their lives. Like, Joffrey didn't need to do this. He was going to be able to continue to be with him, and she doesn't care. Like, it would have been fine.
Just flew too close to the sun. Everyone is always so obsessed on these shows with the idea of, I know I have the leverage over you. Who cares about love? You guys should care about love. Doesn't that matter?
All right. He should have been fine with the idea that he already had the leverage. He didn't need to go to Sir Criston and be like, I know, just so you know. Like, why? For why? I don't get it.
Yeah, the good thing is we're at the halfway point of House of the Dragon at this point.
That is not good. We only have 5 episodes left. Listen, this season is going by so fast.
I am just thrilled by the fact that every one of my expectations for this show has been blown out of the water.
Oh, yeah.
As somebody who was really worried post Game of Thrones, they've done a great job establishing these people. I'm almost a little bit nervous that we have, a lot of these younger actors getting replaced now, because I've grown so attached to the ones that we have.
I know. It's going to be hard to make that switch, but for those of you who watch The Crown and watching the actors get replaced, if you have the right actors as they're growing up, it works just fine. That show did it seamlessly. I feel like they're going to make the right casting choices, and it's going to feel nice and seamless.
It's a nice reference to the greater Matt Smith cinematic universe that is going on here. But all right, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Like we've said earlier, we will have more House of the Dragon coverage plus Andor. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you here next time.